Wow. Sometimes I wish I didn't have to preach after the beautiful music. It's like, yes, words are important, but music is what fills our hearts, isn't it? Thank you. According to my religious dictionary, sacred texts are connected with goddesses or gods, or dedicated to religious purpose, and so deserving of veneration. So what makes a text sacred? And how are they connected to the gods and the goddesses or the religious practices? You can get as many answers as there are synagogues, mosques, seminary students, temples. There are many, many answers. There are different cultural beliefs, even within the same religions. So this is hotly debated in our culture, especially in a climate like now. What does the Bible really say? But as Unitarian Universalists, I have studied this question for years among my people. And the question of what makes a sacred text sacred, I learned for me my second unit of CPE at our local hospital. And it was in the behavioral health unit. I was nervous. I was working with a chaplain. She was my partner, and I wanted to impress her. And I noticed when we were going through rounds that one of the young women had the book of Harry Potter, the Goblet of Fire, on her bed. And so I struck up a conversation with her in the locked unit. Some of the people can have books. And so we had a lively talk about how much we both loved the Harry Potter series. A few days later, we were holding a session together, me and this other settled chaplain and the patient, and she was doing a guided meditation. And the chaplain was leading the patient onto a beach in this guided meditation. And she asked her to pick a favorite beach from her background. And the patient started to get agitated. Beaches were not a safe place for her, and because my eyes were open, I could see that. And I quickly moved. I butted in. And then I quickly moved the guided meditation to the beach in the Deadly Hallows, where the Weasley family had a summer house. Because that beach, I knew, was important. She was already at the point where they were reading the Deadly Hallow books. And the patient settled down when we moved to that beach. And I knew that that story really resonated with that patient. And in our discussion after that session, the chaplain and I talked about the Harry Potter books. She had not read them. And it was in that examination that I realized for many people, Harry Potter was not just a fashionable cult. It was not just a fashionable book to read. It was a sacred phenomenon. An orphan, abused by his relatives, nonetheless overcame adversity and defeated his would-be killer. Its central tenets are love and friendship, not shutting yourself off when offered help, and perseverance in the spite of incredible adversity, pain, and trauma. In a nutshell, the Harry Potter stories were an inspiration for this young person who needed to overcome their own adversity, turmoil, and trials. Modern sacred texts like Harry Potter can bridge in ways that ancient texts cannot. It can offer us modern characters like Hermione Granger, Luna Lovegood, and Neville Longbottom. Uncommon heroes and heroines that we can identify with as women, geeks, weaklings, sensitive boys. Modern sacred texts exhibit the norms and values of our time and place, our culture. And I know that when I was studying for my boards to become a minister, I watched, for probably the 10th time, the Hunger Games series. Seeing a woman learn new skills helped me identify with those parts in myself, those parts that weren't sure about the system and what I was trying to do, but helped me persevere, helped me identify with my strengths and my gifts. And so I passed my boards. Lately, I have been reading Tiffany Aching books, and they're from the Discworld series. How many of you have read Terry Pratchett? Raise those hands high and proud. Well, and Tiffany Aching, if you have tweens, they're written for children, the Tiffany Aching books, as a part of this larger pantheos of books. They're written for young adults. And I have been reading it for the 3rd time. This series deals with the growth of a young teen who makes cheese into a young adult witch. And when I was thinking about our summer series, which is on modern sacred texts, this was the first set of books that I thought of. They're my choice. Tiffany Aching is a young girl who knows who she is and where she belongs. She has a brother, though, in the first book that needs saving. So she takes her cast iron frying pan and she puts on her big boots and she goes out in the world to rescue him from an indifferent fairy queen. And throughout her journey, she looks back at her life to see it with new eyes. Tiffany learns, first sight, Terry Pratchett's words, means you can see what really is there. And then there are second thoughts, meaning you're thinking about what you're thinking. And then, in Tiffany's case, there were sometimes third thoughts and fourth thoughts, although these sometimes led her into bumping into doors. And that, I think, is what you need to be a minister. You need first thoughts, second thoughts, third thoughts, and then those fourth thoughts that are so overwhelming that you do bump into things. And I have the toes this week to prove it. To save her brother, Tiffany needs what is true, not just what others are telling her is true. She sees that her grandmother was a different kind of witch than the normal one that flies around on brooms. Her grandmother was a woman of the chalk and had the land in her veins. And this afforded her respect and power. Grandma Aching had passed on her love of the land to Tiffany. And when Tiffany needed help defeating the fairy queen, she called on that power of the land, that place that called to her, and she answered. And we, as Unitarian Universalists, know the power that can be found in the land beneath our feet. And I want you to put your feet flat on the ground and feel that power. We draw power from nature. We can bathe in forests and mountains that surround us here. We know our terrain has its own way of performing enchantment. We have rainbows. I can't tell you how many rainbows I see outside our back doors during the week when it rains. And we have trees that are here to teach us. I know many of you love your gardens and the rivers and the ponds. Oregon is a place where people still go out in wild places to find themselves. It's one of the reasons I was drawn to you. For Tiffany, the land is like a friend, which she realizes at a critical moment in her battle with the queen, that she did not deserve to die, that she was not alone, and she never would be. Not while she had the land beneath her boots, her land, the land of the achings. And we always, too, have that earth as an ally. It is our partner in creation. It is the source of strength and inspiration. Further on, Tiffany realizes that witches get things done. You can say that with me. Witches get things done. Whether they are clipping old man's toenails or taking care of the sick or midwifing a mom and babies, witches in the book suit up and show up and do the next right thing. Now, this was not what Tiffany thought she would be doing as a properly trained witch. And throughout the book, she remembers her grandmother, the shepherdess, going out in the storms and rescuing baby lambs. It's not pretty, it's not easy, it's messy and dirty, and your boots are wet and everything is sogging, as we in Oregon know how it can be. Witches in Discworld get angry at injustice. And Tiffany says, when confronted about a problem with a specter that won't go away, "Oh, I feel angry a lot of the time, but I just put it away somewhere until I can get something done with it." And we need that now, don't we? In the here and now, that message is important. It's important for us to get angry, but not to get bogged down in it. It's important for us to put that anger aside until we can get something done. Some days, after reading Facebook or listening to the news, even after the short podcast up first, which is only about 15 minutes, it is easy for us to get a swimming head and get bogged down in the mire. And this week was one of them. How many things could go wrong? And it's not over yet. We still have today. And I haven't looked at the news yet. What Tiffany teaches us is that we can take care of those within our influence. At such times, the universe gets a little closer to us. They are strange times, times of beginnings and endings. These times are not necessarily good or necessarily bad. In fact, what they are dependent on is the we that we are. What's important is that we know who we are. And we can look around and see what needs to be done in our villages and in our families. We can center ourselves, we can take that anger, and we can use it to good purpose with what's right in front of us. Like all good heroines when needed, Tiffany tackles bigger problems, like the fairy who tries to take the world back, or a winter god who wants endless snow and ice. She remembers who she is and collects her tribe of witches, friends and family, and then goes into the fray. She may be afraid, but she puts on her boots and she goes out into the world and she helps. She knows that she is just a young girl, but if she doesn't try, what can she expect others to do? She knows someone has to lead the way, and isn't that true now? We all need to play our part. What I loved about yesterday's rally was I saw some people taking a break in the farmer's market and some people walking back to the rally, and then some of us would walk away and get something to eat. And I would meet people and they would say, I just can't go to that rally. It's my third thing this week. And I said, don't worry, I'm going for you. We can take turns, but we can't stop. Grounded in a true sense of who she was, Tiffany was able to make a difference in her world. She was Tiffany Aching, not another witch. She was someone who held her own space. She was a witch who knew exactly who and what she was and what things needed to be done. She had not failed at different parts of the book. She knew that she had only begun, and I know in the work that we need to do here in this church and in the community, this summer we'll have fun. We'll talk about sacred texts that are funny or profane, and we'll do the work that needs to be done here and in the world. So I invite you to go out this week and to look at your books and your music and your films and find your sacred text, and then come tell me about it. Blessed be and amen.